Rodri, give me your thoughts on this move and how much better you think it makes Atleti, because they've made some other interesting signings as well. Do you think they can compete for the La Liga title?
I think they are obligated to compete to La Liga title. I know it's very hard for Atletico Madrid to compete against Real Madrid because we know that Real Madrid with Mbappe is even stronger than last season. But at the end of the day, you're going to have Griezmann, you're going to have Sorloth, you're going to have Robin Lenormand from Real Sociedad, and indeed Julian Álvarez. For me, Julian Alvarez is the playmaker that Simeone was asking for in the last 4 or 5 years. And now that he's obligated to compete for everything. Maybe he's not obligated to win any big title because, indeed, Real Madrid are much better and they have invested much more money in the last decade. But at the end of the day, they have to be up there. And it's not necessary to be like last season or maybe 2 or 3 years before, where Atletico Madrid was maybe 10, 15 points behind the leader. And I think that now they have tools enough to compete till the end of the La Liga to say, here we are, we have great quality players, we have a great squad, and we are more than ready to at least compete for any title.
Herc, we were talking about this from the player perspective on ESPN FC, right? The decision to leave a club like Manchester City to go over to a club like Atletico Madrid. I wonder if you were in his shoes at 24 years old, what would you have been thinking? And how much do you think the national team situation, especially what we saw this summer from Lautaro, who even though he was coming off the bench, was scoring at Copa America, weighs into the choice here to leave Man City?
It definitely weighs into the choice. Listen, as a player, all you want to do is play. And if you're at Manchester City, you're going to be guaranteed to fight for titles, yes. But how heavily involved will you be with Pep Guardiola and Erling Haaland, who is clearly the clear-cut number 9 there? You're going to be a second-choice option. You're going to be a guy who comes in and plugs a hole when needed, off the bench, et cetera, et cetera. That's going to weigh on you heavily. Now, if you've got somebody nipping at your heels on the national team, even more. And right now, Julian Alvarez's national team starting career as a starter is hanging on by a thread. And that thread is named Lionel Messi. And how that window is closing with Lionel Messi in Argentina in his national team career, so closes the opportunity for him to cement himself as that 9. I'll explain. It's very simple. He starts because Lionel Messi starts. Lionel Messi starts because, well, he's Messi. Next to him is Julian Araujo, who runs for Messi. He does all the dirty work so Messi can continue to be Messi and Argentina can get away with it and continue to do the great things they do. But we saw this Copa America. All of a sudden, you're playing, you're running, but you're not necessarily putting the ball in the back of the net. And here comes Lautaro Martinez putting the ball in the back of the net at an incredible rate. I mean, look at his numbers, both club and country. Let's just go country really quick. He's got, 64 games. He's got 29 goals with the Argentine national team. That's almost a goal every other game. And he was the leading goal scorer in Copa America leading up to the World Cup. Goes to the World Cup, is injured. He's got a bum ankle, can't compete to the fullest. Gives Julian an opportunity to play. Julian takes advantage of it. But we saw this Copa America it's not as cut and dry. And you can very much see the type of player that Lautaro Martinez is for Inter. He's a team captain, the leading goal scorer, 27 goals, 7 assists on the campaign in all comps. He's not just your run-of-the-mill forward. He's a guy nipping at your heels. You needed this move. You need to prove to yourself and to the rest of the world you can be that 9.
Julian Alvarez, 19 goals last season, 54 appearances. It's a lot of playing time, but again, most of those coming off the bench in service of Erling Haaland, who had a great season for Manchester City. So this is all part of a kind of series of potential moves here, Rodri, for Atletico Madrid, right? We've got Julian Alvarez coming in. We've also got the recent links to Conor Gallagher. All that may be opening the door for Antoine Griezmann to leave, who, of course, we have heard has been linked heavily over the last week or two with LAFC. What's the latest you're hearing on this, and how badly do you think Atleti want to keep Antoine Griezmann at this point in his career? He is 33 years old.
Well, first of all, when you, Sebi, ask Atletico Madrid about Antoine Griezmann's future, immediate future, they say that they don't really know anything from LAFC and they don't really know anything from the club camp or the players camp that haven't said anything to Atletico Madrid. But on the other hand, we know that there are huge and strong links from LAFC to Antoine Griezmann because they are highly interested on getting Antoine Griezmann as one of the playmakers for the Californian side. Now they have two options on the table. First of all, Griezmann has to think about his immediate future because with now Julian Alvarez getting to Atletico Madrid, now he's going to be the support that he's been asking for in the last 2 years because he felt so alone in this Simeone tactic system because he was the only quality player in order to play some football. So now that he got Julian Alvarez, like, are you going to leave Atletico Madrid now the Argentinian is going to sign for Atletico Madrid? It doesn't really make any sense. But, at the same time, it's like he wants to play for MLS. He does wants to play for LAFC. But the only doubt that they have now, and, after talking to the players camp, is they don't really know if they're going to do it now, I mean, this season, or they're going to wait for one more year in order to stay one more year to Atletico Madrid, give Julian Alvarez his crown, and say, okay, you're going to be learning on my side. You're going to be the new king of Atletico Madrid, and you're going to succeed at the Metropolitano in this last year that I'm going to stay here. I mean, I just talked to Simeone's camp, and they insist that they don't really know anything about Griezmann leaving Atletico Madrid this year. So my guess is that he's going to wait one more season, and then he will join LAFC. But we know that both parts, LAFC and Antoine Griezmann, at any point, I don't know if this summer or in 1 year time, they're gonna get together. They're 100% sure.
Herc, how much gas you think he's got left in the tank, and how badly you think Atleti still need this player?
They still need him badly. He's the heart and soul. He's the playmaker. He's the biggest player they have. He's the best player they have. With Julian Alvarez in that lineup, he's still the man you're going to go to. That's how good he's been. You're talking about a legendary player for Atletico, the all-time leading goal scorer in their history, one of the all-time greatest players in the French national team history, a player who can play on all fronts, in the midfield line, anywhere in that midfield line. In the front line as a 10, he's the creative force. He is the heartbeat. How much does he have left in that tank? Well, look at him last year. Ridiculous year, by far their best player. And I know there's a lot of talk about Cholo Simeone and this Atletico and how they only defend and it's only pragmatic football. Atletico changed last season. They were a team that opened themselves up, and evidence to that would be the exchange they had in the Champions League against Inter and how good they were in that front line, and then the goal-scoring ability of Antoine Griezmann and Alvaro Morata last season. But this Julian Alvarez coming to Atletico Madrid with the reports of a Conor Gallagher certainly open up the way for an exit. And if you wanted to be smart, and I'm talking about Atletico Madrid, in selling a player at his peak value, here comes Major League Soccer, here comes LAFC, and they will pull that clause right there, that buyout clause. The question is when. You can do it now, or they can do it in the winter. But regardless, he is going. And the fact that John Thorrington, in the biggest moment since their first player was signed, which is Carlos Vela, you're unveiling Oliver Giroud, a World Cup winner, and the team president, John Thorrington, isn't there for the unveiling. And then we see him at the Paris Olympics. The red lights go off. You're all saying, something's going on here. My spidey senses are tingling. And all of a sudden, well, we find out from Rodri that his camp, Antoine Griezmann's camp, isn't responding of what's going on. I think the writing's on the wall. It's a question of when.
By the way, Griezmann, I believe, was at the Olympics as well. So, who knows where they might have crossed paths there. Lots of excitement around Griezmann's potential arrival at LAFC. Let's leave Atletico Madrid alone for a little bit and move on to Real Betis, because they got a player on their team that's very interesting to us. That's Johnny Cardoso, who enjoyed a great first season at the Spanish club, but it was so good that AC Milan now apparently wants him. They've made an offer. It was rejected because Real Betis apparently want more than 20 million euros for the young American. Rodri, what do you think's going on here? Are Real Betis just angling for a little bit more money, or are they actually wanting this player so bad that they're willing to stop a move for him going to Milan?
It's a weird mix in between what Betis want and what Betis need, because at the same time they need some money, they need some cash immediately, but at the same time Johnny Cardoso is a key player for Manuel Pellegrini, because if he leaves, we remember that they don't really have any replacement now of the squad. So it's like, okay, what do you need more, the money or the player? We know the AC Milan is highly interested on Johnny Cardoso. Even Betis got an offer from Galatasaray, the Turkish team. It was rejected by Betis. So Betis was like, okay, maybe if you get, well, they said, at least to the Italian team, if you get to 30 million euros, maybe we can think about that. Because, if you get rid of Johnny Cardoso now, you would get the money, but you wouldn't get a replacement at the same level that Johnny Cardoso. And that is a problem for Manuel Pellegrini. There has been very open for some key players to leave in the last 2 years, like, for example, Andrés Guardado, Borja Iglesias, even Joaquin, who retired last year. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I am open for the Betis to get some cash, some money, because the club is above everyone. But at the same time, I need some key players. And what he did last season, it was just incredible. It was amazing. I remember some players from Betis saying last season to me that they didn't know him when he arrived, but in the first 2-3 training sessions, they were amazed by the way he was playing. And at the end of the day, he's a key player for Betis Balompié. And if AC Milan wants this guy, they need to improve a lot the money, because if not, Betis are going to say, okay, maybe in one more year, Johnny Cardoso, maybe he can cost 40 million euros. And they want to save the money. They want to get even more, and they want to keep a key player if Milan doesn't get to the level that they want in terms of money.
Herc, how would you feel about a move to Milan for Cardoso, who actually really just got to Real Betis?
Yeah, mixed feelings about this. And I don't know why Real Betis would do this besides the money, if they really needed the money and they could wait on it. If they can wait on it, because William Carvalho, 32 years old. Marc Roca, 27, I buy that. But beyond that, you're going with Sergi Altimira, who's an academy product, 22 years old, same age as Johnny Cardoso, who was arguably the best young signing of the season in La Liga. The second half, he was very, very good for Real Betis. Manuel Pellegrini knows what he has at hand with Johnny Cardoso, so you don't just go giving that away, especially if they think the projection could be greater down the line. But if you're AC Milan, if you're Paulo Fonseca here, I don't know if you rock the boat. If you really want him, you go out and get him. But I'm bittersweet and mixed emotions on this because of what it would mean for a Yunus Musa. If we're going off preseason games and what they've done and what they will do and how they've done so far, well, they just played Barcelona here in the United States, and in that starting lineup in the midfield, you had Christian Pulisic as a 10. Right behind him, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who I think is a very good two-way midfielder. Alongside him, Yunus Musa. And Paulo Fonseca was raving about Yunus Musa after this game. So what does the inclusion of a Johnny Cardoso mean for a Yunus Musa? That, to me, is where it gets tricky. And Johnny Cardoso's 6 months into his European adventure. He's had a great 6 months, and thus the interest. But you want to give him some time to settle in and really develop.
Again, these are just reports. There are also reports that he's kind of the second choice for Milan. They're looking at Fofana from Monaco, the French international, as their first choice. All right, last person to talk about here on our tour of Spain, Julian Araujo, who's closing in on a transfer to Bournemouth in the Premier League from Barcelona. The 22-year-old Mexican international is reportedly going to fetch a fee around $11 million. He started 15 games last year, Rodri, for Las Palmas, but he was injured a lot. What's the opinion of Araujo as a defender in Spain, and what do you think of this move?
I think it's a great deal for Barcelona. First of all, because he was never going to be a starter for Hansi Flick. He has Héctor Ford, he has Koundé, in front of him. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, he's on the bench. He's going to be on the bench for the whole season. So if someone like Bournemouth are going to come here and pay 10 million euros for a guy that he's not going to be a starter never, and he's only going to play Copa del Rey games, is going to be a great deal for Barca, because we already know the financial issues that Barca are going through in the last 3 years. He was really important last season at Unión Deportiva Las Palmas. Even he was so important that García Pimienta, that now he is coaching Sevilla, wanted him for the Sánchez-Pizjuán team. But at the end of the day, they were like, we don't really have money. We have to invest those 10 million euros in some other players. So that is why he never could come to Sevilla. And I think that, the coach of Bournemouth, he knows perfectly, because he's Spanish. We know, the way he coached at Rayo Vallecano. He likes a lot Julian Araujo. And I think it's the best game for Julian Araujo, because In Barca, he's not going to play. He doesn't really have any other team in Spain that could pay that much money for him. And Premier League, I think, is a very attractive league. It's a great chance for him to keep growing. And indeed, it's a great chance for him to be, okay, I'm going to play a lot of games and going to try to develop my talent. And I'm going to be there just in case Javier Aguirre wants me to be back in the tree again, as he's been in the last decade. In the last year, I meant. Last decade, no.
Herc, you like the Bournemouth fit for Araujo?
Okay.
Ooh, that was a pregnant pause.
Let's break this down for a second. Julian Araujo, you saw the percentage numbers there on duels won, defensive duels won. It's in the 60s. That is a high percentage amount for a defender. He's a defender who relishes defending. So I've got no issue with the physicality of the Premier League coming into play. I think he's a guy that when I've spoken to him, he takes pride in his individual defending. I remember the game last season with Real Madrid where he locked down Vinny Jr. It was his coming out party to La Liga. He's a player that can do very well. And if you can do very well against a player like Vinny Jr., I think you can handle the Premier League. Bournemouth is where it gets tricky. Bournemouth just spent around $8 million for Max Aarons. He's a 24-year-old with Jamaican citizenship, by the way, if you're a Jamaica fan. He's a very good right back. And the other one is Adam Smith, who's 33 years old and a historic player for Bournemouth. He's got over 300 caps. So you've already got two right backs there. So I'm a little bit worried about the situation he's going into. But I do like the system for him. It's a recover the ball quickly, high volume on the flanks, where the outside backs don't necessarily need to be that refined with the ball, if you smell what I'm cooking here. He's a player that you don't really want on the ball, but he's so good at defending. He's so good in his work rate. Physically, I think he's a level above most players with a high volume overlapping system that they employ there. He could be successful. It just doesn't make sense with the personnel they already have, which is why I'm not too sure about this.
To the points you both make about the manager, Andoni Iraola, I used to call some La Liga games. I used to always call Rayo games. Love how they used to play. Could very much see this being a good fit. I guess I just have some honest concerns about whether he's good enough for the Premier League. I don't know that we got a real answer last year if he was even good enough for La Liga. So this, to me, would be a,
what does that mean?
Step up.
What does that mean?
In that regard. Well, I don't know. I mean, he played 15. He started 15 games at Las Palmas. I think the jury's still out on him as a defender.
This is not on you. But I always hear...
The Premier League's supposed to be the best league in the world. This guy has hardly proven it.
There were 0 teams in the semifinals of the Champions League. There were 0 teams in the Europa League semifinals, and there was 1 team in the Conference League semifinals. So let's settle down for a bit. When you're saying he's not good enough for the Premier League, are we talking technical ability? Because I've never heard you're not technical enough for the Premier League. I have heard, are you physical enough for the Premier League? I've got 0 issues with him physically in the Premier League.
I know physicality is his strength, right? I don't doubt that physicality is something that he will bring to the Premier League. Just, is he good enough to be a day-in, day-out starter at Bournemouth? You talk about the other players. That's what he needs. This is what he needs. He needs to be a starter.
We're not talking about a Champions League team. We're not talking about a Europa League team.
You were just naming the guys you're worried are going to keep him on the bench.
That's fine, but I'm not saying he's not good enough to be in the Premier League. I'm not questioning him being in the Premier League. There's a lot of snobbery when it comes to the Premier League and the rest of the leagues. This man was in La Liga at Las Palmas and a consistent starter until he got injured. But this was a guy that was proving his worth. I don't see... and this is not on you. I just don't see the correlation with, are you good enough for the Premier League? I really don't.
Bottom line would be huge for the Mexican national team, right? Jorge Sanchez has pretty much shown us his ceiling. Kevin Alvarez has disappeared, that right back, which used to be maybe a position of somewhat depth. If this guy could lock down a starting job in the Premier League, no doubt he'd be the starter for Mexico there at right back. All right, Rodri, great to have you with us here on Futbol Americas. And as always, when you have you on the show, Vamos Sporting. Vamos Sporting.
Yeah, always. Vamos Sporting. And remember one thing. Premier League may have the numbers, the millions, but Spain has the talent.
And Spain has Rodri Fáez as well.
And
that's what Spain has.